Year 7! Welcome to the last lesson on the Peasants Revolt. So what I want to do today is look at the consequences of the Peasants Revolt. In other words, what happened because of the Peasants Revolt. So the impact or the outcome, if you like. So before we go on to looking at the outcomes and the results of the Peasants' Revolt, we need to remember why it happened and we need to remember what happened. So what I'd like you to do is to watch the video I've attached on Show My Homework, please. Last week, this is about as far as we got. We got to the 15th of July. The king meets the rebels, meets the peasants once more, and agreed to their demands. He said, I'll give you what you want. I'll take away poll tax, but you must stop all of this killing. So what happened next? Well, again, on the 15th of June, 1381, King Richard meets with Wat Tyler near St Paul's Cathedral. Now, at this point, Wat has around 25,000 peasants with him, and the king has around 75 knights. So it does look like Wat Tyler has massively outnumbered the king. So we'd expect Wat Tyler to be very safe at this point. Maybe would be a bit worried about the king's safety. The Lord Mayor of London is there too. And Wat Tyler asked the king to divide up all the church land. Okay, so it's not owned by the church, people don't have to pay rent to it. Give it away and make everybody equal, apart from the king. So there weren't peasants and lords, everybody would just be equal and the king would rule over them all. And the king agrees. He says, yeah, that's fine. But then... So what happens next? Well, what I would like you to do is I'd like you to read the two sources, okay? And from those two sources, I want you to go back to last week's work, which was the comic strips, and I want you to add in the new events, these things that have happened that the sources have told you about. Remember, each box has got to have a caption, it's got to have a picture, colour if possible, and if you get a named person, so someone like Wat Tyler, the mayor, King Richard, remember that they need to have a speech bubble, they need to be saying something. Well, that might have been a bit of a shock. Maybe not what we were expecting. So what I would like you to do now is to read the information sheet. If you're struggling or you struggle with the sources, have a look at the help sheet, which has just got a simplified version of it on there. And I want you to imagine that you're one of the villagers who marched to London with Wat Tyler. Now, the revolt is now over, but all of your friends, all the villagers who didn't go to London, want to know exactly what happened. So you need to write down so you don't forget, okay? So you need to write down and what you will say to them. And remember, make it accurate and make it exciting. So extension task for scholars who are expected to do this. I'd love as many of you as possible to do it. Now we're going to go back to those sources. Now, the people who wrote about the Peasants' Revolt were either monks or they were rich people, neither of whom had any sympathy for the peasants, but they needed the peasants. Okay, they need them because they need the peasants to farm for them and they don't want to pay them higher wages. Now, as a result, they often portrayed the peasants as rude and vicious. And you can see just from those two accounts of the revolt, there are lots and lots of differences. So for your extension task, I want you to go back to the sources and I want you to reread them. And then I want you to answer me these 4 questions. I don't mind if you write out the answer and bullet point, if you write out the question, and bullet point the answer, or if you prefer to write them in a full sentence. I don't mind either way. You must do one of them. You can't just give one-word answers or sentences that start with because if you haven't written out the question. So you've got 4 questions there. First one, why do you think that no peasants wrote down what happened on the 15th of June, 1381? There were 25,000 of them there, but we don't have any accounts from peasants. Both of the sources for question 2 are written by the king's supporters. Now, how might that affect what was written, do you think? How different are the 2 sources? Can you find me and quote me at least 3 differences? And lastly, how similar are the 2 sources? Find me and quote me at least 3 similarities, at least 3 things where they seem to agree. Okay, and that's that. That's the Peasants Revolt done. Now, carrying on this sort of theme, next 2 weeks we're going to look at crime and punishment in the medieval period. Okay, so as ever, if you could either submit your work on Show My Homework or email your teacher, that would be absolutely fantastic. And I will see you next week. Have a great week, Year 7. Thank you very much.